beloveds, we are continuing our little tidbit series of giving you some knowledge and concepts and ideas to play with that will you'll be learning if you come to our workshop around energy medicine, Reiki level 1, 2, and 3, and some framework around body story work. So a lot of different kind of stuff and modalities. And we've been talking, and I use the bowl on purpose to kind of get you into, oh yeah, that vibration, that sound vibration that goes out into the universe. And, you know, inside of us, you know, we're ever emitting out of our energy fields of vibration. And some of those vibrations are out of our wholeness, and some of those vibrations are still out of our woundedness. So the more that we can heal our woundedness or integrate it or neutralize the sting of it, which is our roadmap to freedom that we'll be teaching you about. But the more you can neutralize or integrate those parts of yourself, the energy that you're putting out, just like the bowl, is a clearer sound, and it's going to attract back to you much more of what your heart's desire is. Because if we put out a mixed message, what do we get back? We get back a mixed message. So the more we can put out messages that are clear, that are in what we call our full yes, then we're going to attract things that feel like the full yes in our bodies, that kind of ecstatic path. So anyway, we have been talking about how there are conditions that are kind of internalized conditions for us on our journey of healing and freedom and coming into a sense of purpose or meaning into our lives. And so we already went over a little bit about how power is really important, and when we feel powerless, and how that diminishes our ability to really access whatever it is that we may need or want to create, whether it's in our own physical being or the world that we want to influence, and our ability to influence the world in which we're living. I mean, there's so much that, you know, we've talked about already about how our power is directly connected to what comes back to us and our sense of confidence in ourselves. So in doing this work, you're kind of doing mastery work, and you're helping yourself, no matter what the circumstances, to feel more powerful, whether you're in a hospital room with IVs hooked up to you, or whether you feel like you're in the prime of everything flourishing. Feeling powerful is an inner state of being. So we've talked about power, we talked a little bit about hope, we talked about connectedness and how important that is, and how we want to in our connectedness not feel alone, but feel like we're a part of the tapestry of life. So anyway, all that primer for this last condition that I'll talk about, and how it personally has changed my life and is part of the gift of what I bring uniquely to the work that we do as healers. You know, I in past videos talked about how there was that one period in my life where I was abused as a kid. And so, needless to say, lots of layers and scars and what I call body stories got developed out of that abuse stuff. So unpacking that so that I can be more healed and free and come fully into my purpose has a lot to do with feeling safe. And so as a kid, I remember, you know, how important it was. You probably all have, you know, have you ever played games where, you blindfolded yourselves and led each other around? Well, we actually do some of that in our work, just to kind of go, oh, this is what it feels like to be in the dark, and how much trust do I have for myself or for another person? So kind of fun little activities that kind of bring that all to the surface rather rapidly. But for me, when I was a kid, my safety zone was to go hang out with the trees and hang out underneath of a tree that was like my shelter. And so even as a kid, I found ways to feel safe in times that were not necessarily safe for me. But it also brought me into my gifts. So the other thing is I would hide in closets a lot of times. How about that? As a queer man, it took me a long time to really come out of all those closets. But one of those closets had nothing to do with my sexual orientation. It had to do with the abuse and healing that abuse. And so safety, as I would go into a closet, into our home, part of the gift that I know I have accrued through kind of that wounded healer journey that made me more like the peaceful warrior, is that I sat in the closet and I would listen, and I would listen for the sounds of who and what was going on in the house, and what was going on around me. Well, when I work with clients now, I'm real tuned into kind of the vibration, this, is it clang or is it this nice even sound? So, as you do this healing work, even around Reiki, you will find in the attunements that your intuition, your abilities get enhanced. So out of my wound started some abilities that I now bring to the table. And what are those for you? So out of your wounds is a closet full of gifts that, if you haven't pulled them out, that are ready to come out, to be used by you to not only heal first and foremost yourself, but others. So as I understood safety and understand safety, it has everything to do with so much of how my body physiologically responds to the world. And I'd ask you to begin to think about, when do you feel safe? What does safety feel like in your body? So I'm going to tell another quick story to kind of just get you warmed up with this tidbit. But the story of Viktor Frankl that I use often. And Viktor Frankl, if you haven't ever read his book from years back, but Man's Search for Meaning. And Viktor Frankl was a Holocaust survivor. And so while he was in the concentration camp, one of the tidbits that I take that has to do with safety, so making sure that even in the worst conditions, I feel some safety in my body. And Viktor Frankl did that. And how he did that for himself was, all these horrors were happening, but while all these horrors were happening around him, he would visualize every day, imagining that he was teaching the psychology of surviving the concentration camps to students. So he kind of took this and made it into kind of a visual thing that then ultimately has become part of the purpose of his life, was teaching people about how to heal even in the most unsafe, unsavory kind of human destructive forces that we've seen and that we're seeing again on our planet now. So feeling safe. When do you feel safe? How do you feel safe? What does safety feel like in your body? And so for Viktor Frankl, he was not any more safe, but his visualization is the other piece, is if we can see something in our mind's eye, it has a physiological, neurological response in us, much more than just a thought, but that if we can see it, it actually kind of encodes and bypasses, that consciousness, unconsciousness thing that gets kicked out. It goes into that unconscious realm for you to begin to cultivate more and more a sense of safety. So I want you to think about how safe you're feeling in your world, in the world currently, and where does safety kind of reside in your body, or how you might use that, because it will be an important part of you knowing that these 4 conditions are for use first and foremost as a practitioner to come into your service abilities, but also for you to draw out from your clients. Oh, even in the most unsafe conditions, how can they begin to cultivate safety? Just like I did as a little boy, kind of going to my hiding places until I found new strategies of really opening up fully and letting that healing in. So hopefully this is juicy stuff for you to consider. Namaste.